I teach 8th grade history, and I have 110-ish students. 2 of them are reading on grade level right now. 18 of them are at a kindergarten level. 55 of those students are between a 2nd and 4th grade level.
Helen, how much of this is to do with young women not having kids, and therefore their empathy has to go somewhere? It's a controversial question because we know that women, as they have kids, they become more conservative, their priorities change, they focus more on family than they do on social issues.
I have certainly met liberal women whom I would be so bold as to psychoanalyze that is exactly what is going on.
My yearn to get married has almost completely dissipated. When I slowly started dismantling the patriarchy and the misogyny that was embedded in me from just, being in a society. Most women are taught that getting married and having kids is the most important thing they can do in their life. And I knew about a year ago that I did not want to have kids. I don't want to foster. I don't want to adopt. Nothing like that. When I started dismantling the patriarchal system and the misogyny in my head, I started questioning, why did I want to get married in the first place? And personally, I just like the idea of a day being all about me and wearing a beautiful gown and just it's this huge thing, this huge event about myself. And then I realized, hold on, I can get married every day. I can literally go buy a wedding dress right now.
I'm sure by now you are aware of Natalie Nunn. She went to USC on athletic scholarship and she graduated with 2 degrees, one in sociology and the other in communications. And this is Natalie Nunn at 42 years old, I believe.
What? You think I'm dumb? I didn't want to answer his dumbass questions. How about that? And I didn't. And I interviewed him and he answered mine. My favorite answer was, because I was scared to jump on the ball. God, Natalie, you're f***ing good. Maybe I should start a podcast. Oh, no, you don't have enough time for that. You have too many shows right now. Too many shows, too many big shows. Gotta stay focused. But someone said you didn't answer any of the questions. I didn't have to answer the questions.
By whatever today's modern definition of a baddie is, apparently Natalie Nunn is that. Or at least so many young ladies in video posts said so, that she slayed and that Cam Newton was a middle midget compared to her. But one thing that was really interesting is seeing post after post and video after video of young ladies championing this, almost like she won the Super Bowl, really. And then I had a moment of clarity.
How much of this is to do with young women not having kids, and therefore their empathy has to go somewhere? We know that women, as they have kids, they become more conservative, their priorities change, they focus more on family than they do on social issues.
Remember when I said women are more violent than men? That Natalie Nunn Cam Newton interview, that's exactly what I mean. Because not only can that fight, but did you see the way she literally destroyed Cam Newton? She emasculated him on his own platform, all right? That level of psychological violence, emotional violence, verbal violence, that's not something most men can match. Because, yeah, he could get up and punch her in the face. And like I said, she could fight, so she'd probably have a decent chance against him. But that's not the point. The point is she basically dominated him in front of everyone. She attacked every single aspect of his masculine identity, tore him down to shreds over it, and basically asserted that she was more of a man than him.
First of all, it's asinine to think that any of us mere mortals who did not spend our adolescence doing 3-a-days in strength training every spare moment we had, then going on to college where you train more than that and winning the Heisman Trophy, and then going on to the NFL where you train even more than that and winning the NFL MVP, thinking that we could square off in any kind of physical encounter with Cam Newton and come out on top unless we went to MMA, we went straight at his knees or something, or his elbow. I mean, it's a figment of our imagination for the most part. But apparently this young lady thinks that Natalie Nunn had a fighting chance. That aside, however, the better question is, why is she so invested in that particular interview? And I think maybe there's a commonality between her and the young lady who said that she can buy her own wedding dress and she'll read her own vows. She doesn't need marriage. They don't have a family to pour that attention into. And what happens when these modern women in this feminized environment do have the children and are raising them without a man.
Folks, tonight, Atlanta police say parents could now face charges after hundreds of teenagers caused chaos at the Atlantic station. So this is video. This is from Saturday night showing fights unfolding and customers running for their lives. Police said that they first responded to Atlantic station after 7 p.m. when someone set off fireworks and found about 400 unsupervised kids.
What we did not see were parents of any of the 400 juveniles, children that were present. And as we continue to address this issue and make adjustments to keep this area safe, we must be joined by parents knowing where their children are, ensuring they are under proper supervision of adults and are abiding by the law.
I think the Great Feminization, the channeling of so many women of childbearing age into the workforce, has had two really big, potentially civilization-ending consequences. One is the one I've been talking about, which is the feminization of institutions that makes them no longer function well. The other is declining birth rates, that if you have too many women too dedicated to their careers or engaged in other activities, and so that they're not having kids, that too can cause the end of your civilization.
Another thing to consider, not to one-up Helen Andrews, is that many young ladies of today in this feminized environment think that they can do just as well raising their children without an overbearing, quote-unquote, patriarch in their house. That the patriarchy is what's wrong with pretty much everything. And if you remove the patriarchy from the household, they can do a better job of raising their children. And what happens when they're tired from work or they're focusing on their career and those kids get to the age where they start testing boundaries? You get 400 kids at Atlantic Station in Atlanta acting up and the police pleading for parental intervention. But in a feminized society, we know where that blame is going to head.
We have to look at universities when it comes to this, because there's a lot of women who go into university, and men, and they effectively serve as indoctrination camps. I have friends and I know people who went to Ivy League universities in this country, and what they tell me about the first couple of weeks, I'm going like, this isn't a place of education. You know, you have to stand up and say how you've been oppressed. And that is one very prestigious university in this country where everybody in a class stood up and had to identify how they are oppressed and why it affected them. And you're going, what has this got to do with psychology?
I think we can rest assured that at least a good portion, I hope, of those kids went home and they were disciplined by whomever they're living with. Most likely they're a single mother, because if my kid were out like that and I caught them, they would not be going outside of the house for a very long time. But that aside, imagine, though, there's probably a group of those kids that went home and those parents said you were victimized, that I'm a victim, that we're victims, and that the perpetrators are the police or the laws or even your father not being here. And if you're in a feminized environment where you're excusing that or you're making that reasoning to explain why what happened at Atlantic Station happened, then your remedy for it would be...
In D.C., they are trying to pass a bill to lower the age that juveniles can be tried as an adult from 16 to 14 for violent crimes. I say, if they are charged with a crime, make sure you send the daddy to jail. Specifically, the daddy to jail. Yeah. Make the daddy pay.
This lady went on in her comment section to say that she was joking around and that you guys can't recognize a joke when you hear one. Of course, one, she doesn't seem to have a joking face or anything. She's not laughing. And two, it's not very funny to throw even more black men into the American judicial system. I don't think that's funny. But all of that aside, her remedy for this situation is take the men who are supposed to have responsibility and punish them. But here's the problem. Men don't have a problem dealing with that if we have authority. If we have authority to take care of our children, tell them what they can and can't do. You cannot go to Atlantic Station tonight because I don't condone of you going there. Sit down and read a book. Then fine, our kids act up, we'll handle responsibility for it. But what happens when you don't have the authority and people want to push the responsibility on you? is the perfect mix that happens in a feminized society. I'm going to give an advance warning here. I'm not going to edit out the language in the next part of the video because I think it's important to hear it as it is, one, but this is a textbook example of what happens when feelings rule over facts and when men have responsibility to run things, but don't have the authority to enforce anything.
The first really famous woke video of the girl yelling at her college master in the courtyard because of the Halloween email. Like the master's wife had sent out an email saying, everybody, Halloween is coming up. Let's be chill about cultural appropriation. If you see a white girl wearing a sari, don't freak out. And a bunch of people said, that's really offensive.
A bunch of people freaked out.
And it culminated in a screaming match because the master of the college told people to, come out and let's talk it over. And one girl just had a shrieking meltdown. Dropped a lot of F-bombs, which I think is not appropriate to do in that situation.
When you listen to this part of the conversation, aside from the language, I'm sorry, I want you to pay attention to two things. One, this is the headmaster, the schoolmaster speaking with a student. Notice how the student is speaking to the headmaster. And two, notice the language used on a campus, an education center. You're not hearing terms that are about education. You're hearing terms about feelings.
It's because other people have rights too, not just
walk away. Walk away. He doesn't deserve to be listened to.
Unsafe space here for all. Stay quiet. For all standing students. You understand that? As your position as master, it is your job to create a place of comfort and home for the students that live in Silliman. You have not done that. By sending out that email, that goes against your position as master. Do you understand that? Then
no, I don't agree with that.
Then why the fuck did you accept the position?
Because
who the fuck hired you?
I have a different
You
vision
should
than you.
step down. If that is what you think about being a master, you should step down. It is not about creating an intellectual space. It is not. Do you understand that? It's about creating a home here. You are not doing that.
You're supposed to be our advocate.
You should be at Ben Lessay when you hear a Franco say that she doesn't know how to create a safe space for her freshmen in Silliman. How do you explain that? These freshmen come here, they think this is what Yale is? Do you hear that? They're gonna leave, they're gonna transfer because you are a poor steward of the community. You should not sleep at night. We're out, we out. You're disgusting.
One commenter to the trigonometry video writes, I did a sexual harassment awareness course in the NHS. We were told it doesn't matter what is said or what is done. The only thing that matters is how someone feels about it. Therefore, as long as someone feels like they have been harassed or offended, that is the be-all and end-all, and that the perpetrator will be disciplined. Feelings are prioritized over facts. Crazy and dangerous. Another says, I quit my university teaching job. I refuse to take a sexual harassment exam. Another said, as a teacher, the feminization of the education system is one of the worst things that's ever happened to society. Speaking of teachers.
Sometimes these kids, I don't understand how they ended up to this point. You know what I mean? Like, I teach 8th grade history, and I have 110-ish students. 2 of them are reading on grade level right now. 18 of them are at a kindergarten level. 55 of those students are between a 2nd and 4th grade level. That's a lot of them. And that's typical of what I've seen lately from students. But it's not just literacy. It's not just literacy, and it's not just like lack of content knowledge. It's not just critical thinking skills. It's basic thinking skills. My students can decode almost nothing. They cannot apply inference. They cannot process questions that are longer than a sentence. They cannot connect cause and effect. They can't track multi-step ideas like in a political cartoon. And it's scaring me a little. Like, I see it every single day. I had a kid yesterday, 4 kids actually. This happened in every class. We were doing guided notes, supposed to be a real easy day. It was review. They wrote down, Maryland was founded as a safe haven for Catholics. It was on the board. They wrote it down. And before we moved on, I call on a student and I ask, hey, where were the Catholics? One more time. And these students, what they do is they look at me, and then they look at their notes, and then they look at the board. They look back at their notes. And some of them never answered me. They never figured out the answer. It was wild. And I kept giving them hints, like rephrasing the question and saying, like, it's in your notes. We just wrote it down. Where are the Catholics? It's on the board. And they never got it. They can't read their own notes. And I don't mean their handwriting. I mean, like, they can't make heads or tails of it on the page.
There is a kind of strange irony in seeing a teacher with purple hair explain her frustration with students, because her purple hair tells the students, you can do whatever you want to. You can present yourself any way you want to, as long as you feel good about yourself. And I'm not saying feelings don't matter. What I am saying is that at some point you do have to produce as students. And if students say, well, what if I don't feel like producing, or I'm going to produce in a way that feels good to me? Then you get this second story.
I had a kid today. I have these extra credit assignments, 3 of them. They're on the wall. They could turn it in at any time. And I think they're pretty easy. Like this one, and it replaces your lowest daily grade. So like end of the quarter, lots of these start to roll in. This one says, on a separate sheet of paper, choose 4 principles of the Constitution, and for each one, write what it means in your own words, an example of how it works in the U.S. government today, and a personal example, how that principle might show up in your own life, school, or community. I wrote them an example, and I labeled it, do not use the example, and I even gave them a checklist at the bottom. Make sure you have these 4 things so you can get full credit before you turn it in. Make sure you have the 4 principles and the meaning and the examples. Make sure it's 1 full page. And this student just turned it in, and I read it. First of all, they don't write it on a separate sheet of paper. I've only had 1 kid this year do that. They just write like in the spaces of the instruction, like in the margins and stuff. Very bizarre. But like they just don't do the assignment. It's like they don't understand because it's not written in like a multiple choice format. This is exactly what this student wrote. They wrote the principle's definition in the student's own words. They rewrote the instructions. The whole thing. Even the example where it says, do not use this example, they just copied the instructions and wrote them again. And then checked off the checklist, even though like you didn't do it. And this student, just like the students yesterday, I don't think they're fooling with me. This is a student who's doing extra credit on their time off. They genuinely want to bring their grade up. I know them. But like, is that what you think that the extra credit assignment was? You sat there and thought like, yeah, she wants me to copy down the directions and then turn it in. But no, they didn't think that because they didn't think anything. These kids have a frightening ability for information to go from their eyes to their hands and not pass through the brain at all. Like, what do we do, y'all? That ship is sailing across the ocean and there is no one at the wheel.
So when people come to me and say, what have been the negative effects of the Great Feminization? That, I think, is at the very top of my list. That's one of the most important ones, that if you've got HR ladies planted in every single institution and who see it as their mission to get rid of exactly that maverick type of personality, there's so much innovation that we're missing out on, but we don't know what would have been. One of the cancellations that affected me very emotionally, very deeply, was, I can't remember the guy's name, but he was the astronomer or astrophysicist who had just like landed a satellite on a comet or something really impressive like that, but he was wearing the t-shirt with the scantily clad ladies on it. It was like a bowling t-shirt.
I remember this.
Yeah, and somebody said, oh no, he's got scantily clad women on his t-shirt, and they put him through a struggle session for disrespecting women. And I was thinking, this guy just landed a satellite on a comet. Focus on that. He's so impressive, and you're putting him through this horrible public shaming. But that's the way wokeness works. It doesn't even register to these people that this guy has done something deeply scientifically impressive, that he might be a singular human being. For all you know, he might be the only person on the planet who could have done that. And all you care about is the shirt he's wearing.
When I hear talk of the Great Feminization, what I hear mostly is that feelings matter more than anything else. And that's fantastic when we're number one and we have so much more cushion than any other country on the planet. And essentially we can sleepwalk our way to being number one into perpetuity. But what happens when you're not in that world anymore? We have a school system full of young kids who do not know how to follow instructions on a piece of paper telling them to write a very simple explanation in 8th grade. And not only do those students not have the ability to do those assignments, but they have a teacher in front of them with hair that's purple or tattoos all over their body or someone that's overly concerned with some interview between Natalie Nunn and how she owned a former NFL MVP. I'm old enough to remember when a good portion of my teachers were men, and the women teachers that I had families. And so teaching was a part of their life, but they didn't come to school covered in tattoos or purple hair or talking about the Natalie Dunn interview. They said, I got to go home and take care of my kids. And y'all better have that homework tomorrow or there's going to be hell to pay. And if you take that out and replace that with, don't matter if you don't do your homework, because what's most important is that you want to come to school and you have a good time, then you get a school full of kids that are graduating and they're worried about their feelings and how oppressed they are and how other people aren't doing their job to make them feel a certain way. In essence, feminization gives you a mess because at some point you have to produce, and production doesn't give a crap about your feelings. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment below. Catch you in the next video. Take care, guys.